I've been in design for a while, and one of the privileges that has given me is to work with some of the best product leaders out there. And I was really honored when I reached out to the top ones, and they agreed to join me here, so thank you so much for being here. I've worked with all of the folks on this panel today. And where we'll start is, we'd love for you to just introduce yourselves and tell everyone a bit about your background in product management.
Hi, I'm Tapan Bhatt, and I've been working in product management since the 90s, so very long time. Across a whole range of industries, starting with some of the earliest online banking and online financial services at Intuit, some of the first photo management software that at Adobe, and I built the consumer photo and video business there, and then at Yahoo, where I worked with Daniela. Most recently, I've been working with a whole bunch of startups. Most recently at NerdWallet, where I ran all the operating functions in the finance, it's a financial service, and I'm thoroughly enjoying working right now with a whole variety of new companies, mainly as an advisor and consultant. Right now, I am at a very large company, Novartis, helping them with their digital health strategy, and in that capacity, I'm actually working with a lot of Brazilians. So.
No purple is perfect.
Hi, my name is Lisa O'Malley, and I've worked for quite a long time also in product management, but I've had a variety of product marketing, product management, and that line blurs over the years and goes back and forth, as well as some engineering roles as well. I worked first in consumer electronics, and then I worked for 12 years at PayPal, which is where I worked with Daniela. And there I worked on the consumer side of the business, our SMB business, and then also our enterprise business, in that PayPal had a consumer product and an SMB product, and they had a lot of enterprise customers who were having a really hard time using the SMB product, and so we had to rebuild it. Most recently, and now for the last year, I've been working at Google, and Google Cloud specifically. The team I work on is called Cloud AI and Industry Solutions. So when Google called originally, I said I'm really not interested in infrastructure and compute and storage. But what I learned about this role is it got to take Google Cloud for granted, and we get to build cool solutions specifically for enterprises within industries, so retail, healthcare, financial services, a slew of other things. We get to take all of the AI assets of Google and make them available through Google Cloud to these enterprise customers. So super exciting place to be. I do not have a background in AI, and so I'm learning a ton, but couldn't imagine a better place to do it.
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa also runs Women in Product, which is amazing. She was one of the original founders. It's an amazing organization. So if you don't know about it, do check it out, especially as we bring more diversity into the tech industry. And then Randir, who hopefully will join us once he's done with his call. He's at Omada Health. I also worked with him at Yahoo. So I wanted to start talking about the practice of product management and how that can lead to product success and business success. And maybe by sharing examples. And Tapan, I was actually reflecting on one of the projects that we worked on at Yahoo, where I think the process really influenced where we took the product and how we defined the vision. And you may remember this. We were working on My Yahoo, which was a personalized portal. It was basically the personalized version of the Yahoo homepage, and the project was in trouble. The team had just adopted Agile. This was 15 years ago, so please keep that in mind. The team had just adopted Agile, and they were really struggling to figure out how to execute. So they were working at sort of like bottoms up, figuring out all of the parts of what needed to happen. And one of the things that we decided to do was really to first define a vision. So very similar to, if you've read the Working Backwards book about Amazon, they do it through press releases, imagining what a press release of a future product might say. We did it by actually creating prototypes and demos of really nailing that vision and then decomposing it back into its parts, right? I always think about it, it's really important to have a blueprint, otherwise you end up in the end building, a bathroom off the kitchen when you're building products. So So I feel like that really helped. And I wanted to just go around and ask you to share examples of where the practice of product management helped the success of a product, and then if you're being brave enough to share perhaps an example where how product management and product vision was practiced didn't work so well.
So riffing off Daniela's stuff, I'll start actually with something that was both a win and a mess. Because usually, nothing's usually a complete success or a complete failure. You usually have some mix of those two. So when I was at NerdWallet used to be a $100 million blog. Literally, it was a blog helping people make credit card recommendations. And so we had to figure out, how do you take something that has already got a lot of consumer success and build this into something that could be a much bigger company? So just as Daniela suggested, we started with a concept car, which was, the auto industry is really great at this. They build these cars that they will never launch. But all the ideas from the cars usually get into some future model. And it's a really good tool because it helps rally an entire company behind a certain vision and help people realize where you want to go so that they can internalize that in their decision making. So we built this concept car and it tested fantastically with consumers. And one of the things that they said is, we want to help, since all of us, three of us have worked in finance at some point, they wanted an app that would help them meet their financial goals. And it would help them save money and do various things. And so we built a prototype of that where it was very goal-oriented. It tested through the roof, like through the roof. We launched it. It did really well, got a whole lot of customers. And then we found that after month 1, everyone was dropping off. And we were like stunned. We did all this research and it wasn't working. And so we'd keep acquiring a whole bunch of new customers next month and boom, they'd disappear again. And so as we dug, what we found is while everyone liked the idea, they weren't making enough progress on their goals in the few weeks that they were very engaged in the product. And so this is where it was a failure, actually, of the user research team, the design team, and the product management team. Because when consumers told us they loved it, we just took it for granted. And I think one of the worst mistakes we can make is when somebody says they like something, we're so happy to hear it. We just say, oh, that's great, let's move on to the next question. Instead, as business people, as product leaders, one of the most fundamental lessons I learned is never accept what they say. Always assume that they're lying to please you.
Or to look good.
Or to look good.
Yes, of course I want financial goals.
Yeah. So that's one thing where it was both a success, and we managed to fix it. We managed to turn it around by realizing this was a mistake, and so we had to do things that they could use in the short term. But this is where visions work, prototypes work, great to rally people around, but the success of a product really comes from asking why at every step. So.
Okay. I'll give a somewhat similar example in that there's a mixture of failure and success in there. When I joined the enterprise team at PayPal, it was clear there was a lot broken. We had a lot of customer complaints, but they were very sort of individual. You know what? Reporting sucks. Or like, I can't reconcile my books. Or I can't log in and my users can't log in and I can't grant permissions. And so there was this litany of complaints. And so there was a backlog of 40, 50 items where everybody was sort of fix that point thing, fix that point thing. And so we kept fixing things and the complaints kept coming. They were just slightly different complaints because we uncovered another area of pain. And what I realized is we weren't being big enough in our vision. It wasn't a durable vision. It was like, fix that little thing, fix that other little thing. Oh my gosh, there's another thing popped up over here. And so after spending 3 weeks, I think, talking with customers in the US, in Europe, and Asia, like what was coming to me was like, this is really, really broken, and we need to show the magnitude of how broken it was. And so we put together it wasn't a vision, it was more of a explanation of the magnitude of the problem, where you had customers who were about to leave us, customers who weren't expanding their business with us because their user experience was so bad. And we had to paint like, this is a burning platform picture, and unless we invest big, then we won't be able to fix it. And so we did get investment, and I think Daniela probably remembers the time where we had to hire 100 people in 100 days with no dropping of the quality bar. Whoa. So that was phenomenal, but what was interesting was because of the durability of that vision and the fact that the North Star was so far away, was that we could always have something that we could bounce an idea up against. Okay, should we fix that thing? Is it going to help us in this direction? And is it the most important thing of the many things that we could fix? And so we always had this North Star to go back to and say, are we making progress against our ultimate goal?
We're still doing it too, Lisa, as you might know.
That's why I left. It was never ending.
Yes, please.
Hi folks, I'm Randeep Vieira. I was not late, I was actually early, but I was trying to get some work done and ended up appearing to be late. So just to set the record straight. I'm SVP of product at a company called Omada Health, and that's our logo and name. The example that I will use though is from a company prior to this one called Headspace. Has anyone heard of Headspace? Yay. Okay, great. What's the one word you would use to describe what you know of Headspace?
Meditation.
Meditation? Yep, that was exactly our problem. Seriously, when people thought of Headspace, and Headspace had over 100 million downloads at that time, but was perceived as a meditation company. This is, if you want to learn how to meditate, then you go download Headspace. And it had the exact same problem that Tapan talked about, which is people come with a lot of aspiration and hope and vision and dreams of what the future them will be, and that's why they download the app. But then they realize they have to put in work, even if that work is sitting on a chair without doing anything. That's hard work, right? It's probably harder than going outside and running, which is what my current company tries to get people to do, which is also hard. So when you have something that's not instant gratification, it's hard. And there were two challenges there. One was the internal challenge of how do you get people who had been at the company for a while and who had joined this company because it was a meditation company and they loved meditation, to think of it as more than a meditation company. And the irony is that the vision of Headspace was to improve the health and happiness of the world. It had no mention of the word meditation. But that anchor was so strong with the employees and with our customers who knew it as that brand of the meditation company, that when we wanted to move out of meditation or beyond meditation to movement, to sleep, etc., it was more challenging internally than externally. So much of what we do in product management sometimes is change management, but the change begins with us. If you can't convince your team, the concept car kind of examples, if you can't get people excited internally, you have no hope in hell of doing that externally. So we spent a lot of time making sure that we could get people to understand why we needed to move, where we needed to go to, what it could look like, the kind of concept car, but then also paint a picture of we're not going to get there overnight, we're going to do that in phases. We call this gap that Tapan talked about of what people tell you and why they tell you, as Daniela said, the say and do gap. And I've been in the behavior change business for the last two companies for the last 4 or 5 years. And so we know that people, whether they're lying or they're bluffing, whatever it might be, we just assume that there's going to be a gap between what they say and what they do. And so we almost discount what they say and we just look at the data on what they do. So to the point that even when we build prototypes, we don't do prototypes where we just show it to them and ask for their feedback and walk away. We build prototypes which are more expensive but are more valuable that they can use for days or in some cases weeks at a time. And we're watching that data because we know whatever they tell us, we can throw out the window. So invest in making sure that you go past what they tell you, beyond the words, to the actions. And you can do that even in prototypes. And I would encourage you to take that investment, invest that time and money, go slow to go fast. Because once we had that traction of the prototypes, we knew we had conviction that not just we were building things not just with what people told us, but with what people were actually doing, and we were able to get good traction with those services.
I think one of the themes or things that ties all these things together is that product management is not just about building something. And somewhere about, I mean, all of us are of a vintage that we have seen a lot of cycles. But about 10, 15 years ago, one or two companies, they were very big companies, led to this thing that product management was about working with engineering and design to build features. Those companies were great because they had huge adoption, user base. They didn't have to worry about it. But Lisa made this comment about product management, product marketing, etc. What's really great, as I see this trend coming back, is that everyone now has to think about not only how you're going to build it, but how is someone going to use it? How are you going to get them to use it? And how are you going to make money on it? You know, the days of Google being able to just launch a new product and have it be successful, which has worked in their consumer business, hasn't been able to scale. And when you see, you know, Facebook, same thing. What other new product have been able to launch that's successful? And so all these companies are realizing that we have to shift. We have to, Amazon, you know, who has heard of the Amazon Halo band, right? How many people are using it? You know, it's because you have to think about all things from the beginning, and this is what's so encouraging now that product management's sort of almost coming full circle to time all these things back together. Sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Tapan. When I was at Intuit, they did a study to try to unpack the factors that influence NPS, so Net Promoter Score, likely to recommend, for those who are not familiar. And what they found was at the bottom of the pyramid, benefit I care about. So what is the customer benefit, right? That, to your point, is actually going to help them adopt the product, and that will set you apart from the competition. The next one, which is close to my heart, is ease. So on top of it, it has to be easy, right? You can't have friction in what you're delivering. And then the tip of the pyramid is positive emotion. So delighter, and really thinking about, you know, how are you creating that loyalty with really connecting to the users, I think, beyond just the utility of what it is that you're delivering. And those three items account for 75% variance on Net Promoter Score, or that likely to recommend. So really you need to make sure that you're hitting on all of those. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and probably just double down on a theme that's come up on several panels today, which is hiring talent. And I have to imagine the same way that I get pinged every single day about design referrals and design leads, that product management is just as difficult. Anything that you can share with the group in terms of tactics for, you know, finding great product talent? And if you don't have the answer, that's okay.
Yes, it's hard, and it's hard, I think, for every function in different ways. And I think it's always hard to get good people. It's just more challenging in this time. The areas that have been helpful for me is to be a little bit contrarian. So the obvious thing when you look for product managers is you want to look for people who've been product managers somewhere else. And sure, we do that, but then that's the same pool that everybody else is hunting in. And so we augment that with doing two things, which is we look for the traits that we need for successful product managers, and we look for people who have those traits, even if they're not product managers. So examples are, we have a couple of people who moved from technical roles. So they were in technical project management, and we pull them into product management internally. So finding that pool of talent internally where you can support career growth, but making sure that the skill set that you have is still there. So we do a lot of recruiting internally from other pools of people, but who have the right talent set. The other group is outside the company, again, similar approach of people who have the right talent set and make sure that you can onboard them, and you have to have the right structures and coaching in place. So growing the pool of people that you can bring in has been effective. Those people are super excited for a break into product management, because anyone who's been in product management, you have to be a little bit crazy to stay in product management or you go away. But those are the people who've never been in product management love the idea of having a chance to come into product management. So you're getting this really good group of people who are very enthusiastic about getting this break. And if they're coming with the right skill set and you support them, they can be incredibly successful. So that's been our path.
I'll add to a little bit of what you said there, which is even looking beyond the domain skill set of product management. I also like to look beyond, sometimes we fall into the trap of, if I'm hiring someone for healthcare, it has to be someone with healthcare experience. And so being willing to look beyond domain experience, because whether they've been a product manager before or not, to Randir's point, the core skill set is really communications and ability to inspire, ability to talk different languages, whether you're talking to the finance person or the marketing person or the sales person or your technologist or your design person, and to synthesize both a customer viewpoint as well as an internal viewpoint. And so those skills aren't taught anywhere. And when we came up, there was never any product management school. Now there is some product management skill schooling, but without wanting to denigrate any of us, it's not rocket science. It can be taught, and it's better to get people who are, kind of all-round athletes, smart and curious, and to hire them into the role and teach them what they need to know about the domain and about product management core skills. I personally have found new graduates to be really, really great source of product management capabilities, and also internships from things like returnships to work, or people moving out of a career in the military, like a veteran internship. It allows you to see how people are in their day-to-day working and to see how good they are at learning, because learning is going to be a constant in product management, and that's what I look for when I'm trying to hire product people.
So, agree with everything they said. I've got two other things that I wanted to add to this. One, when I got to NerdWallet, we had a very unbalanced organization. I'll just give you a thing. We had 50 engineers, 44 designers.
That never happens.
It gets worse. About 35 product managers and general managers and business managers. None of them who had ever been product managers before. So everything was out of whack, and so we had to transform the organization to get to more regular ratios. We had to get to about 100 engineers, and there was no head of engineering there. So by the time I left, a few years later, we had a normal organization with some really high-quality people using a lot of the skills, the things that Randir said, brought in people from other parts of the organization, hired a lot of new college grads, but there were two other things that enabled this. The first is people come to work for people, and people come to work for vision. And what's happened right now is we've got a lot of people coming into this field because it is the hot field, not because they have a burning desire to work in it. And the people who are going to make your company successful are the people who have that burning desire. And it's really, really important to find those people. And those people want to work for big ideas, and they want to work for high-quality people. So one of the first things I did was this whole concept card that we did, and got a whole lot of people excited, that I could actually hire a really top-notch head of engineering, who then, miraculously, we got 5 senior directors within a month, because they wanted to come and work for this guy. There was another tactic that we used, which is, people say, oh, diversity, inclusion, you have to do all those things. We don't have to do it. This is a great group of a workforce that is completely being overlooked. So what did I do? I went out and got a lady, she had taken some time off to have children. She was not being leveled at the right thing when she came back, which is a very, very common problem. She was just a superstar. You hire her in, and then we got in a bunch of PMs who were some very qualified people did not, she was back, and she said, I've got young kids, I do not want to be a director, but I want to be a PM. No one would hire her as a PM, because she's a director. And so you brought in those people, and all of a sudden, boom, your performance of your organization goes up, people want to work with people like them because they're learning from people like them. They're being mentored by people like that. And I think that's where you can't forget about these things. These are all useful tools, and recruiting is everyone's job. So.
That was excellent. I'm taking notes myself since design is just, as hard of a field to hire for. I think we have time for one question. Two more questions. So anyone in the audience might have a question for the panel? And if not, I have other questions. We have one here.
Can everyone hear me?
Microphone.
Oh. Hi, I have a question. When you're discussing teams that are reiterating product when they're going out to the market, right? And this is specific to companies that tend to create communities around product. I think we all see that, whether it's design, whether it's fintech, you create some kind of community, you have a freemium, and then you launch. I think my first question is, from a product development side, do you think that's a positive way to get your product out there? And then second of all, once that freemium is happening and you're tweaking the product, does this lead to a better product, or is it better to go for that customer acquisition that's more targeted to what you're building?
Your name and company usually.
Oh, and my name is Jolynn. I'm at K4 Capital, and Ginger just merged with Headspace, so I was excited to hear about that whole story because I think it helps with moving them away from just meditation.
So I've worked in freemium companies and also worked at situations where you have to actually sell the product and you have to use it today. Freemium is really, really powerful, but a big part of the freemium thing is two things. When you're setting the expectation up front that nothing's going to be free forever. And then the second piece of it is really trying to find the hooks that are going to get people to subscribe. And too often, or pay, and too often what ends up happening is you're so focused on user growth that you just keep forgetting about, oh no, we have to grow, so let's defer the conversion pieces. And everyone gets on board. The board's happy with it because they're just seeing all these user growth numbers. The company's very excited with it, but it ends up hurting you in the long run. So you have to do one, and then you have to start doing the other, and then do more of the one, and so on. That's what I found works the best.
I'd just add that it really depends on you and your business model. Don't try and copy somebody else's business model for you. The counter example I'll give you is Superhuman, which is an email app. Right? Who would have thought that people would be crazy enough to pay $30 a month for email, which you can get for free from 24 companies, but they made it work. So if you're focused on delivering value, you will find people who will pay for it. And I think as product people, it's our job to find problems and opportunities and solve it in a way that delivers value that people will be willing to pay. And then it becomes much more of an operational or scale question on whether you want to go one way or the other.
I don't think about that. You guys covered.
Thank you for that question. Any more?
Hi, Fabio from Indicator Capital, DC in Brazil, and I'm based here. The question is, you all work in the product area and in international, multinational companies. Could you compare the state of, your area, from Silicon Valley, other parts of US, emerging markets like China and especially Brazil? It's a big gap, I think, in terms of how mature the teams are in these different countries, and if you can add maybe a device for how Brazil can grow faster in this area.
So I don't know that I have anything specifically to add for Brazil, but what I observe in general is when you're setting up companies or hiring or putting, extending your reach into other countries, there's sort of an order that it happens. And what we tend to find is that engineering talent comes first. And so you focus around several large schools that start delivering high-class engineering graduates. Product and design tends to come a little later, and so what we often have to do is import product and design to make sure that you're getting the right type of product and design thinking, because otherwise your engineering teams are going to work on the wrong things. And so we have found it beneficial to seed those teams first from the US or from wherever your center of excellence is, and then move from there. Then what you find is as more companies grow in a particular area, the talent starts to become more homegrown, and the coaching happens more locally then.
I think I just 100% agree with what Lisa said. There's one more thing to add, which is one of the reasons why that's the case also, is because there's a lack of community. Product management at its, there is no rule book, there is no formula for product management. It is, you learn it through insights, through repeated exposure. And when you don't have that community built up, it's the same way with design. It's very difficult to get that going. And so that's why having these seeded things, seeded people become really useful. So at where I'm working currently right now, we actually brought a couple of Brazilian talented folks on the digital side back to the US, so that on rotation, so they can work here for 2 years and actually go back to help build out the teams there. And because it's a multinational company, they actually move people around from country to country. So one is Brazilian, maybe going to India next. So it sort of like moves around, and you start seeing a lot of connectivity between them, and you start getting the cycle. The other thing that you asked specifically about emerging use the emerging markets thing there. What we're finding is that there's a lot of similarities in tiers of markets, and that the old model where people used to take what worked in the US and try and move them to other countries has just been proved wrong. And now you've seen people copying from China, which has its own own good and bad things. But what I was talking actually today to a large fintech company that is taking their product and have found that the mobile usage patterns, the movement down from the top tier cities more and increasing sophistication more into the, I wouldn't call it hinterlands, but smaller metros, is being mirrored in a lot of emerging markets. And the same kinds of solutions that they developed for a couple of these other markets is now being scaled into other countries, and they had actually used a bunch of Latin American markets as an example.
Thank you, Tapan. Yeah, I would say, I just wanted to double down on what you said about, I think the movement of talent is really changing that picture. So I think back, Lisa might remember this 5 years ago when we were trying to hire design in India, for instance. It was really hard to find talent that was comparable to what we were seeing in the US. 5 years later, my team in India is absolutely comparable to the US, and part of it was we had folks that maybe came to school here, went back to India, then started mentoring others and coaching others. And I see the same thing with Brazil. I advised a company, Get Ninjas, in Brazil about 10 years ago, and when I look at where they were back then and where I think the just overall landscape was back then, and you fast forward just 5-7 years, it's in a completely different level. So I think that what we're seeing is these emerging countries won't have to take as long as Silicon Valley did to get to the point that we are. They're getting there so much faster, and I think a lot of it is because of the mobility of talent. Thank you to my panelists. This was a wonderful conversation, and thank you, Margarisi, for having us.